So thank you for the introduction. I'm Vít, and this is my talk titled Markdown Themes in Practice. There have been a lot of great speakers today, so it's definitely a high bar, but I'll try my best. So let's first break down the title of my talk. So what does it mean? So Markdown, as many of you will know, is a lightweight markup language that is easy, or that is supposed to be easy to both read and write. Unlike TUG, Markdown has no programming capabilities, which keeps things simple for the authors. However, TUGspers can style Markdown elements using TUG macros. For small style sheets, they can do it just like this. But for larger style sheets, it's useful to use so-called themes, which allow the TUGspers to express those large style sheets as program modules using the principles of structured programming. In my previous talks and articles, I used simple examples, and I spoke about the themes just in abstract, which make it difficult for readers to actually understand how they would use them themselves. However, since last summer, I have been working with the International Software Testing Qualifications Board, ISTQB, and I have been developing complex Markdown themes which they use to typeset their documents, and they allowed me to share the code with you. So in this talk, I'm going to go through an actual real-world example of a Markdown theme so that you can see why and how you might use it yourselves. First, I will go over the ISTQB project so that you can understand the scope and the requirements. Then I will discuss sort of motivating examples, how an author might use the theme and what they may get as an output from TUG. And then in the second half of my presentation, I will discuss the actual implementation so that you can see what actually happens behind the scenes. So in my project, I developed a LaTeX document class and 6 Markdown themes. The themes themselves, or the document class, is what you might expect. It's just a simple LaTeX 2E document class. It defines the LaTeX markup. And the themes are written in the Expo3 programming language, which was developed by the LaTeX team and which is used in the LaTeX 3 kernel. And they are used to process YAML and Markdown documents. So the base theme is called ISTQB/common. It enables Markdown syntax extensions, and it also defines the mapping between the Markdown elements and the LaTeX markup, which is defined by the document class. It also exposes to what we call, or what I call, snippets, which are basically a public interface which the authors can use to interact with the theme. So one of them is called metadata. This one is used to load YAML files with document metadata, and also language, which is used to load YAML files with language definitions so that there can be different language mutations of the same document. And all those other 5 themes are based on this theme. They inherit all the implementation and also these 2 basic snippets. Let's skip these 2, the ISTQB/syllabus, the ISTQB/body of knowledge. They are basically just aliases for the common theme. They don't really add anything especially useful. They just have the name of the document type which they typeset. The document type which I'm going to focus on is sample exam documents, which are encapsulated in these 3 themes in the right bottom part of the picture. the ISTQB/sample exam theme processes YAML files with question definitions, and then these ISTQB/sample exam questions and answers typeset either lists of questions or lists of answers based on these YAML question definitions. And this will be sort of the focus of my talk. This will be my example on which I'm going to show how Markdown teams can enable this. So as an author, you would prepare a YAML file such as this. So this is a YAML file called questions.yaml. There is a list of questions. Each question has a number. There is some metadata, such as the question text, what is the answer to life, the universe, and everything, a couple of possible answers, then a designation of the correct answers, and some explanations which the learners can use to find out why the correct answer is the correct answer. And just for a good measure, here are two other questions so that it's not too trivial. So two other questions. What's France's capital, and which two of the following animals are classified as mammals? You can see that there can be multiple correct answers, and the Markdown team will have to sort of grapple with that. So next up, you would have this LaTeX document. This LaTeX document would import the theme questions. From this theme questions, it would import the snippet called questions. It would assign it a shorter name. It's not clear why here, but in Tugboat you really have just a narrow column, so just to fit the Tugboat format. And then inside the document you load the questions.yaml file with this snippet, and this will produce this output on the left part of the slide. So a list of questions. Then you might have a different LaTeX document where you would import the answer key and answers snippets from the theme/answers, and you would invoke the snippets on the file questions.yaml like this, and this would produce the answer key and the list of answers, which you can see on the right part of the slide. So from the standpoint of the user, this is quite nice. You just define your questions in a structured way, and you have a small LaTeX driver file which is quite easy to read, and you get quite a satisfying output. So the ISTQB was quite happy with this. So let's talk about how this is actually done in the theme. So I'm going to focus in the preprint, which you can find on the conference website. I'm actually discussing, I discuss the entire code of these three themes, the ISTQB/sample exam star themes. In this talk, I won't have that much time, so I will focus just on this ISTQB/sample exam theme, which just processes the YAML file with questions and stores it inside macros. And then the actual typesetting, which is format specific, is left for you to read on in the preprint if you're so interested. I think this is like the most interesting part of the themes. Anyways. So this is how the snippet questions is defined. The snippet enables the processing of YAML files because it's a Markdown package. Usually when I say Markdown input, it expects that it receives a Markdown file, but Markdown files tend to have YAML metadata, so sort of naturally it's also able to process YAML files. So we just tell it there can be YAML metadata, and if it looks like YAML metadata, assume it's YAML metadata, and if the whole file is just YAML metadata, then it is. So in the future, we'll probably have a YAML input command which will do this automatically for you, but for now, this is how you enable YAML input. And then you say, then it reads the first field of the YAML file, and if the name of the field is questions, then it sort of calls a private snippet called questions/list. By calls, what happens is it opens a tag group, and it says at the end of the element, enter the tag group, but before that, run this snippet, which means that until it reaches the end of the questions, it will be affected by the changes which are done by this snippet that I'm going to discuss on the next slide. So it's sort of this sort of does everything, but it's broken down into a lot of smaller snippets so that we don't have to, we don't end up with indentation hell. We could also do it like in a one large snippet, but that's really difficult to work with. So this is the next snippet. It reads the actual question numbers and it stores them into an expl-free data structure. It stores them in a sequence so that we know which questions are actually stored in the YAML file. And then it calls the snippet sample exam /questions/star. And here it becomes actually interesting. Here we are actually reading the actual fields of the question. So if it's just an unstructured field, such as the number of points or the question text, then we pass it to a expl3 key value so that it processes it as it sees fit. I will show that on the next slide. And if it's some of the structured fields, such as answers, correct, or explain, or just these two, then we call subsequent snippets which process these. Here I say call questions/star/answers or questions/star/correct. What I mean by that is this magical formula which I used at the bottom of the previous two slides, which basically says call this snippet locally within this element, but once we have returned from this element, sort of forget about the changes from this snippet. We are likely going to have some syntactic shorthand for this in the future. I discuss this more in the preprint, but here, because I don't have enough space on the slide, I just said call the snippet. I think it's even more readable this way. So what happens with these simple fields, which are unstructured, is that they are passed to a simple expl3 key value, and it just stores the values into property lists, which are keyed by the current question number. So, for example, this property list under the key 1 would store the learning objective for question 1 and so on. For the structured fields, for example, the correct answers, here we store the correct answer letters in a dict or a property list, which is keyed by the current question number. So it's a comma list. So in this property list, we would store under the key 1 just the letter B. But if there were multiple correct answers, it would be a list of all of them separated by commas. And we do the same thing for the list of possible answers, but here we also have an extra property list which stores the correct answers and is keyed by the question number / the answer letter, and the value is, for example, 24. So there would be 1/A and the value would be 24. So this basically concludes the snippet. After it has run its course, we have a sequence with all question numbers. We have a property list with all the unstructured values, such as the learning objective or the number of points or the question text. We also have the property lists with possible and correct answer keys and also the answer texts. So this is all you need to actually typeset the list of questions or the list of answers in the subsequent themes. Like this. As I said, more information can be found in the preprint. And this concludes my talk. So for many authors, TeX can be kind of difficult. Markdown and YAML can make it possible for them to reap the benefits of TeX without having to use TeX as an input language. In this talk, I show how TeXperts can use Team to write large style sheets for Markdown and YAML documents. Many thanks to ISTQB for allowing me to show the themes that I developed for you, for them here to you. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
I also try to do some YAML, and then in preamble style. For example, I tried to inject the YAML metadata into, for example, hyper setup, but that's at a preamble stage in LaTeX. So I ended up using Lua script, but I wonder, maybe you know of a way how to leverage the YAML data into the preamble of LaTeX documents.
Yeah, the Jekyll data option of the Markdown package can be used in the preamble as well as in the body of the document. So unless the renderer macros, which actually produce output, do something which is not allowed in the preamble of a LaTeX document, then it should be completely permissible to use them. In fact, the metadata and the language snippets, which I showed earlier, these are typically used before begin document within preamble. So it shouldn't be an issue.
I wonder, do you have access to the Markdown or the TeX code to change this, or that would have to be done in the template then? Suppose I want a column less, what do I have to do? So you now have nice answer sheets, but I don't want one of the columns.
Yeah, in that case, I suppose you could change the snippets, since in the Markdown themes the snippets are really the level of abstraction that is useful. You might want to redefine these snippets.
And then another question, presumably, so you use R Markdown to program this, but it presumably could also be done in TeX without any Markdown, because we didn't see any Markdown in the trivial case. The document doesn't contain Markdown, and the end user is not concerned here with Markdown.
Yes, so the example here was a YAML document, but you could, truth be told, I'm not exactly sure what the question is. Is it because...
Could I adapt this, or use these same YAML files to produce TeX things where I don't want to use Markdown to add the text, but pure TeX. So I would want to have a TeX document and insert questions from these YAML files. Would that be possible?
That would be possible. If you're using LaTeX, there is the package called oh God.
There's a package, yes.
Yeah, there is the package, the Markdown package uses to load YAML is available on C10. So you don't need to use Markdown package. You can just use Lua to load the YAML file and do anything you want with it if you don't want to use the Markdown package. That's possible.
Okay, thanks.
Tiny YAML, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I had about the same question because the Markdown was in the title, but I think we have the same idea, is that no Markdown was used there.
Well,
or could the authors use Markdown inside the questions?
They actually can.
Okay.
That's how it currently works. It's not useful everywhere. It's usually useful. So we are planning to give an option to disable it, but currently all the text fields in a YAML file can contain Markdown.
Ah, okay.
So they can actually use Markdown markup inside the question text, the answer texts, the explanation. So they actually can mix up Markdown and YAML quite naturally.
And I alluded to this earlier in my talk. In Markdown, it's very nice to do simple things. It becomes complicated as soon as you want to do complicated things. What if some author of a question needs, well, the one classic is that how do you center text? It's not possible in Markdown to center text. How do you use math inside a question? What would be a solution there?
Yeah. So Markdown was created as a preprocessor for HTML.
Mm-hmm.
And in HTML, the answer is attributes. Mm-hmm. And we support attributes. I actually wrote a tugboat article like the previous year called Attributes in Markdown. So you can actually give a set of class names which the authors can use to make some changes. You can also use raw tech input if you want mm-hmm. to allow that to your authors. For example, to create some more complex typographic material. So
okay.
There are options.
Okay. Any other question? Because I said we were 5 minutes early, now we're 15.
Was there a special reason to give a label of the question? Because it looked like it was just in order, so I would expect a list then, I guess.
Yeah, it was part of the requirements so that you can have holes in the numbering scheme. Really, no reason really,
okay.
Other than that.
I usually try to not give comments instead of questions, but since we have a lot of time, maybe there is a field where what you are doing is really important, and this also was mentioned in Vincent's talk. A lot of people use Markdown in the packages like Swift, Nitr, especially the Nitr with R. And basically what they do, they write things in YAML like document class, column article, title, so on and so on. And then they have some either R functions or some functions to translate this YAML into tech, and then Markdown code to translate tech, and it's a lot of mess. So I think that a package like you might be integrated with Knitr and other things to make it a little bit more streamlined and a little bit cleaner that people are doing right now.
Yeah, should I respond? Yeah, I'm not terribly familiar with Knitr. I know in general what it does, but yeah, even with given my limited understanding, I think that you could like skip one of the steps, and instead of generating tech from Markdown, you could just compile some driver file which would process the Markdown internally.